It's easier to maneuver and use the road than to go upwards. Anyway, whatever the case is, we hope that that can be rectified. Let's return to the studio and talk Uganda's journey in achieving first oil sale. I must add that word. Of Uganda's 5 sedimentary basins, the Albertine Graben, Hoima Basin, Lake Kyoga Basin, Lake Wamala Basin, Kadam-Moroto Basin, the Albertine Graben has so far been discovered as the most prospective area for petroleum in Uganda. It forms the northernmost part of the western arm of the East African Rift Valley system, 500 kilometers long, averaging 45 kilometers wide and 23,000 square kilometers. It runs along Uganda's western border with the Democratic Republic of Congo, and the distance is 1,200 kilometers from the nearest coast. To track down some of these significant developments in oil production and where Uganda stands is the Chief Corporate Affairs Officer at UNOC, Tony Otoa. He's joining us this morning. Many thanks for making time.
Thank you. Thank you.
When I look at Tony Otoa, I see positivity. No doubt about that. There was a time we were having a debate and they were like, we need more positivity than any attempt at negativity.
Absolutely.
And in the oil sector, this is a hanging low fruit.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Just tell me about the prospects, how you look at them, before we even delve into your work as Chief Corporate Affairs Officer.
If I speak about the prospects, first of all, thank you very much for having me today. And I think it's a very, very important conversation that we should be having as Ugandans, but also as regional players in the East African region.
That's right.
First and foremost, I think it's a very exciting time if you are a Ugandan to understand and see activities starting to happen the way we expected them.
Yeah.
For a long time, we had been talking about this oil and gas story, and I was part of the people who would preach about what was happening. And you know, sometimes you walk on the street and someone says, hey, things are not happening.
That's right.
Now we see things happening. And in terms of prospects, like the way you've asked, it's a very positive story. We are already seeing Ugandan businesses making opportunities for themselves within the sector.
That's right.
We're seeing amazing young people, young Ugandans, becoming professional in the sector, doing things that we would only see in TV or on TV, you know, abroad and all of these things. But these people working within the sector, doing the critical work, especially with the infrastructure that's already set. But more importantly is the opportunities that come or will come to the country. Uganda, unlike so many countries, is going to maximize this opportunity in a way that we have never experienced before because of how we have managed to focus and regulate the sector even before we begin. So I think it's a very important and interesting time. And if I talk about prospects and positivity, I think it is positivity best with facts. Yeah.
Okay, you speak about regulation and the fact that you seem to have taken care of the back end before we begin the entire process. There are countries that have already started their process towards becoming oil powers, so to speak. And some would say Uganda seems to be lagging behind in that particular steed. But when I hear you speak, we are simply ensuring that we do not stumble later. Is
Absolutely.
that so?
Absolutely. Let me give you simple examples. Let's first look at Nigeria. You know, people like talking about the oil cast, the oil cast, the oil cast. Look at Nigeria. When did Nigeria implement its first local content act or law? It was in 2010. Can you imagine after years of producing oil? 2010. Now, one interesting example that I like referring to, and I remember someone on X jumping in and saying, Ugandans are just talking too much trash. Ghana, you know, discovered commercial deposits at the same time as Uganda, and they are already pumping.
They're already pumping.
When you look at Ghana today, they are benchmarking on Uganda on how to create a great, important legal regime to manage the sector. Local content, environmental laws, laws on how to manage the resources themselves, issues of royalty, all of these issues that are pertinent, especially when oil starts flowing. You know, when you look at oil and how it is managed in most countries, it's usually controversial. And it's usually controversial because people haven't taken the right procedures or right precedences to make sure that everything is moving smoothly. In Uganda, I can speak today and say, we did these things years ago. Now we are simply actualizing how these things are happening. And of course, with the an important regulatory arm like a petroleum authority, which regulates the sector, we can clearly see that everything is going the way we expect it to go. Otherwise, right now, today, we would be having issues in this oil and gas story.
Okay. Tell us about the levels of investment, especially when it comes to infrastructure, but also equipment and the general nature of the ecosystem, how it works within the oil industry.
I will speak about what we saw 2 weeks ago. You see, we have a new board that has come into play at Uganda National Oil Company, and these are really amazing people, very knowledgeable in the sector. But we had taken, some of us had taken some time without going to see what is really happening on the ground. You know, the young people like saying, Tuliku ground. What's on the ground? So what happened was, we went with these amazing people, and I can tell you for a fact, if you look at the level of investment, not just within Hoima alone. When you move 40 kilometers out of Hoima to the industrial park, you will clearly see a lot of investment that is going to support this country. An airport, which is now pretty much 99% complete, I would say. Amazing runways. It's an international airport, by the way, with amazing infrastructure that will support a lot of the economic growth within Uganda and the region. But again, look at what is within the Kingfisher area. I mean, amazing well pads. And again, amazing young people, by the way, running these well pads. We met a very interesting young lady who took us through what she was doing on the well pad. But you can clearly see that the infrastructure is amazing, enough money spent on that, and good to go. Then, moving to the Tilanga area, you see the rigs and the mobilization of the rigs and the work that is being done there. The central processing facility, the amount of infrastructure to make sure that we are getting to fast oil, very remarkable. If I talk about our progress today, most countries would say, you know, or most people would say, things are supposed to be moving faster than that. But you see, for a capital-intensive sector, like the oil and gas sector, you can appreciate the amount of effort and money and capital that has been put into this infrastructure. But again, I also say it's important for us to go and see, you know, when you go and see, you move away from arguing and debating of, you know, social media to really see what's happening. And it's quite commendable to see the investment that the joint venture partners and the oil and gas companies have put in, the kind of, you know, people that they've brought in to support with, you know, transfer of knowledge and skills to support our local Ugandans to become knowledgeable and run this eventually. We're in a good place.
Talking about transfer of skills and knowledge, especially with regard to local content imperative, what is our pool of professional talent when it comes to the oil industry? Are we seeing Makerere University, are we seeing Chambogo University churning out professionals that are going to be onboarded, or we are waiting for people who have been particularly lucky or strategic, so to speak, and have gone to China, have gone to Holland to study some of the things?
Well, brother, I'll actually make this very local. And this is the beautiful story about the oil and gas sector. When we went to the Kingfisher site, the Kingfisher rig, we found a young lady called Naiga. Naiga is a young lady. Guess where she studied? Mbara University. She went and studied oil and gas. Mbara University. She's doing all of those amazing engineering things that we would assume someone from abroad would have to come and do. We went to the rig in the Tilenga area rather. And again, it was a young lady trained in Uganda managing such an opportunity. I think it's clearly it's clear to say Ugandans have the ability and are doing actually these amazing things. The transfer of knowledge and skills is not a thing that takes 10 years, 15 years, 80 years.
That's right.
As long as we have the right people studying the right things again and being able to put that into practice, we can have a lot of people, a lot of young people especially, participating in this oil and gas story.
Is this being pushed specifically by the sector players, for example, on advising what particular courses or designs to go for? Because one thing, before you do, one thing is for sure, the average Ugandan might be confused about exactly what to go for, because there is a plethora of opportunities, and they're like, what do I go for? And in that confusion, they miss the opportunity. So how is government helping on that?
Absolutely. You see, the interesting thing is, you know, as Ugandans, as, you know, by EDB, we always like to say, chiche chitambura, you know, and you always go for what is what is actionable. But in 2013, there was an industry baseline survey that was done by the joint venture partners. That's Total, Sinok, and Talo at the time. And when that industry baseline survey was done, what we found out, I was in charge of local content at the time at Total. What we found out was, these are the statistics, and this is the inconvenient truth, by the way. 1% will be your people like me. Yeah. Then your engineers are about 14%. Your engineers, you know, your civil engineers, your technical guys, and all of that.
That's right.
60% are your artisans, your masons, your welders, you know, the guys who are doing the craftsman kind of opportunities.
That's
okay,
right.
The plumbers and all of that. 25% are unskilled. All they have to do is to just have the right prerequisite training, which is for, you know, health and safety, and they are performing. So again, it's now where we have to, as a country, focus on. And these conversations have been going on with the different ministries, especially the Ministry of Education. I remember I was part of a technical team which supported with focusing more on the BITVETs, the TVETs, you know, the technical institutions, because that is where the bulk is going to happen. Right. Now, I'll make you amazed, by the way. Our partner, Total, is training 200 Ugandans at the institute in Chugumba, Uganda Petroleum Institute in Chugumba. What are they training them for? They're training them to be able to provide services, to provide their manpower to the oil and gas sector. That is a positive step. Now, again, back to what we asked or what we talked about in the beginning. Unlike many countries, which just rushed to move into this opportunity, many locals never realized that. And when they began training, it was a little too late. Let's also remember that this is a resource that is finite. It will, you know, fizzle down at some point. Yeah, sure. So the earlier we engage in it as Ugandans, the better. And I think this is the time, and we're seeing it happen.
The same question can be posed to you with regard to SME sector and who can look out for what business. When it comes to capacity to do business in the oil sector, it comes down to technologies and the available skill set. Most of the SMEs that want to go in might not readily be in the oil sector pipeline itself, but the attendant and perhaps support services. Do they know?
Absolutely. You know, during my stint at Stanbic, through the Stanbic incubator, we worked so much with UNOC to try and see that, number one, we get as many local businesses to understand the sector. That's right. Because one of the biggest challenges for most businesses was visibility of a demand. You do not know what's going on. You do not know when opportunity will come. So that was the first thing. Then number two was to show them or prove to them or tell them that it's not business as usual. You have to improve on yourself, your skills, your certifications, your standards. You have to be capitalized because it is not our usual, you know, kind of scenario. What happened over time, and I'll give you a very interesting story of a business or two businesses that I know of. These were briefcase companies. Briefcase companies that wanted to participate in the big boys world of oil and gas. When they came to the Stanbic Business Incubator, what we did was to train them with the support of UNOC, of course, train them, build them, certify them, and get them ISO certified. Today, one of those businesses has an over $8 million contract in the oil and gas story, and it has branched out of Uganda to the region and to West Africa. Those are the stories that we like to see. Those are the stories we would love to see. We would want actually to see now more Ugandan businesses do this. But can I tell you another fact? Ugandan businesses, if you went into the oil and gas sector, you will see many of them doing a lot of the amazing stuff, including the massive construction. If you look at Excel Construction, for instance, doing a lot of the well pad construction and all of that, that would never have been a thing for Ugandan business. In fact, Ugandan businesses would think that is unusual. But you can clearly see that, number one, the government has been intentional in having this local content story pushed over and over. The regulatory authority has also been very intentional, but also the oil and gas companies have come out to say, this is what is happening. especially through the supply development workshops, which happen every 3 months. We're having one as Uganda National Oil Company in Acholi. We're going to have that in Gulu. And the reason, again, why we're having it in Gulu is to make sure that the northern area is part and parcel of this conversation, which has been predominantly around the Bunyoro region. So now we are focusing on the north. Acholi is very important. I don't know if you know, but we have oil in Nyoya. So it's very crucial that we have Uganda as a whole involved in this oil and gas story. Okay, that's quite interesting, and we shall be looking forward to monitoring the developments in there. Talking about safeguards, the environment has been an issue, so much so that we've found ourselves in the throes of the international community regarding to how best the environment is going to be protected. These are things that have been taken care of back end by government, but concerns still do arise. Absolutely. Yeah. My brother, I'll be very honest with you. Number one, you're dealing with a sector that is highly regulated. Okay. Meaning, before you even do work without a helmet, work will be stopped. Yeah. So the environment is something very crucial, especially in these days when we are talking about climate change. Very important. Now, within the areas where we operate, you have the Ramsar sites. These Ramsar sites are internationally recognized as protected areas. How we work around them or circumvent them, or how we even work in a lot of these areas, has to be to the detail of making sure that the environment is taken care of. Now, before any work is done, of course, we have ESIAs, Environmental Social Impact Assessments, and these are looked at by NEMA, but also feasibility studies done. Not only NEMA, because you see, some of this funding, or a lot of the funding that has to come in, comes from international agencies like the International Finance Corporation, IFC. What happens is you have to make sure that these reports are validated before you can do anything. That's right. If they are to be validated, that means that they have to go through a rigorous process to make sure that nothing is done. I will tell you something interesting. I don't know if many of you have been to the Murchison Falls Game Park. You realize that if you are a person who loves speed, you'll be the most frustrated Ugandan, because the speed limit is so low that you will have to even give a chameleon enough time to cross, the road. So the environment is very important. The natural habitat and whatever is in the environment is very important. And I can tell you for a fact, we are making sure that that is not impacted in any way possible. Okay. Tony Otoa, Chief Corporate Affairs Officer at UNOC, many thanks for the perspective and sharing on the latest developments as Uganda moves towards becoming, as I usually say, an oil power. That will do it for our Tech Note. Do stay with us. Kickstarter is up next, and we'll be talking about what is the pain points of the census. Have you been counted? We hope you get counted today. Stay with us.